A corporate titan's daughter boards a flight in economy, seeking normalcy. A white passenger forcibly takes her seat, mocking her race and status. The crew does nothing. But when her father, a billionaire who just signed a $5 billion contract with the airline, learns of this, he boards the plane himself. What happens next will shake the entire aviation industry and expose systemic racism at 30,000 feet. The overhead bins slammed shut like gunshots. Maya Chen stood in the narrow aisle of Flight 447, her boarding pass trembling in her hand. Seat 14A, window confirmed, but someone was already sitting there. The woman looked up with ice blue eyes and a smile that wasn't a smile at all. She wore a cream cashmere sweater and gold jewelry that caught the harsh cabin light. Her designer bag sprawled across the middle seat like a territorial claim. "Excuse me," Maya said, her voice steady despite the heat crawling up her neck. "I think you're in my seat." The woman's smile widened. "I don't think so, sweetheart." Maya extended her boarding pass.
Okay.
"Row 14, seat A, clear as day." The woman didn't even glance at it. She settled deeper into the seat, crossing her legs as if Maya had just asked her to surrender a throne. "There must be some mistake," the woman said, her tone dripping with false concern. A flight attendant appeared, blonde ponytail swinging. Her name tag read Jessica. She looked from Maya to the woman, and something shifted in her expression. A choice made in microseconds. "Is there a problem here?" Jessica asked, but her eyes stayed on Maya. "She's in my seat," Maya said, showing the boarding pass again. The woman sighed dramatically. "I've been sitting here for 10 minutes. This girl just walked up and started harassing me." 30 passengers watched. Some pretended to scroll their phones. Others stared openly, waiting for the show. Not one person spoke. Jessica's smile was apologetic, but not to Maya. "Ma'am, let me check your ticket." "Ma'am." Not the woman who'd stolen the seat. Maya, the woman, Diane, according to the credit card she'd just pulled out with exaggerated patience, produced her boarding pass. "Seat 14C, middle seat." Jessica examined both passes. The math was simple. But when she looked up, her expression said something else entirely. "I'm sure we can work this out," Jessica said, her hand already guiding Maya backward. "Let me find you another seat." Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't move. 3 hours earlier, Maya had stood in her father's downtown office arguing, "Dad, I'm 16. I can fly economy to one debate tournament." She crossed her arms, her debate team jacket hanging off one shoulder. "I don't need the jet." Richard Chen looked up from his tablet, his reading glasses perched on his nose. At 52, he'd built Chen Aerospace Technologies into the world's largest private aviation contractor. Tomorrow, he'd sign the biggest deal of his career, a $5 billion partnership with Global Wing Airlines. "Maya, you know why we have security protocols. I know you want to protect me, but I also know you raised me to understand the real world." She softened her voice. "How can I fight for justice if I never see injustice?" Richard studied his daughter, brilliant, stubborn, carrying his eyes and her late mother's fierce spirit. Maya had been accepted to Stanford's pre-law program. She'd won national debate championships arguing cases about inequality and civil rights. He sighed. "Economy. Direct flight. You text me every hour." Maya grinned and kissed his cheek. "Deal." Now 4 hours later, she stood at gate 23, backpack slung over her shoulder, feeling deliciously ordinary. Around her, travelers juggled coffee and carry-ons. A baby cried. Someone argued with a gate agent. Normal chaos. Her phone buzzed. Her father's assistant, Monica. "Contract signing moved to tomorrow, 9 a.m. Your father will be there early to prep. He says have fun and be safe." Maya smiled and typed back a thumbs up. She silenced her phone, tucking it into her jacket pocket. For the next 4 hours, she was just Maya. Not the daughter of a billionaire, not a future lawyer, just a girl flying to Philadelphia for a debate tournament. She reviewed her case notes while waiting to board. The topic: Systemic Barriers to Equality in American Institutions. She'd prepared arguments about how power protects power, how silence enables injustice. She had no idea she was about to live her thesis. Boarding began. Maya joined the economy line, ticket in hand. The gate agent scanned it without looking up. She walked down the jet bridge, that familiar airplane smell, recycled air and cleaning solution, filling her lungs. The flight attendant smiled as she entered. Jessica and an older man named Mark. They looked right through her the way service workers do, friendly but distant. Maya found row 14, seat A, window perfect. She could watch the clouds and think. She stowed her backpack under the seat in front of her, pulled out her earbuds. Hands settled in. She never saw Diane Fletcher board 10 minutes later. "Excuse me." The voice came from above, clipped and cold. Maya looked up. A white woman in her 50s stood in the aisle, designer purse dangling from her forearm. Her hair was salon perfect, her makeup expertly applied. Everything about her screamed money and expectation. "Yes," Maya said politely. "You're in my seat," Maya blinked. She glanced at her boarding pass, still tucked in the seat pocket. "I don't think so." "This is 14A, the woman's lips pursed. "There's obviously been a mistake. Someone like you wouldn't be in first class." She paused, glancing around as if just realizing this wasn't first class. "Well, anywhere near the front." The words landed like a slap. Maya felt the eyes of nearby passengers turning toward them. "This is my assigned seat," Maya said, keeping her voice level. She pulled out her boarding pass and held it up. "Row 14, seat A." Diane didn't even look at it. Instead, she simply sat down in the window seat, her body blocking Maya's access. She pulled out her phone and placed her purse on the middle seat like a barrier. "I'm sitting here now," Diane said, scrolling through her phone. "You can find somewhere else." Maya stood frozen in the aisle. Behind her, passengers were backing up, annoyed by the delay. A man in a business suit sighed loudly. A woman with a baby pushed past, muttering. "Ma'am, you need to move," Maya said, her voice stronger now. "That's my seat." Diane looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "Are you threatening me?" "What?" "No, Jessica," Diane called out, her voice suddenly trembling. "Jessica, this girl is harassing me." The flight attendant appeared instantly, ponytail swinging as she rushed over. Her eyes went to Diane first, concerned and maternal. "What's going on here?" "Thank goodness," Diane said, pressing a hand to her chest. "This girl has been standing over me, demanding I move. I've been sitting here peacefully, and she just walked up and started making accusations." Jessica finally looked at Maya. "Miss, can I see your boarding pass?" Maya handed it over, her hands steady despite the fury building in her chest. Jessica examined it, then glanced at Diane. "Ma'am, may I see yours?" Diane produced it with a flourish. "Seat 14C, middle seat." Jessica looked at both passes. The evidence was clear. But when she opened her mouth, Maya knew what was coming. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," Jessica said, her smile tight and professional. "Miss, why don't we find you another seat? I think we have some availability near the back." "But this is my assigned seat," Maya said. "I understand, but we need to keep boarding moving smoothly." Mark, the male flight attendant, appeared behind Jessica. He assessed the situation in seconds. Black teenage girl, white middle-aged woman, a plane full of witnesses. Maya could see the calculation in his eyes. "Come on, sweetheart," Mark said, his hand hovering near Maya's elbow but not quite touching. "Let's not make this difficult." Diane smiled from the window seat. Victorious and vindicated, phones came out. Passengers in nearby rows began recording. But no one spoke up. No one said, "That's wrong." No one defended Maya. 30 people watched. 30 people chose silence. Maya's vision blurred at the edges. Not from tears, she wouldn't give them that. But from rage so pure it felt like swallowing fire. She'd debated racism in courtrooms that didn't exist yet. She'd written papers about microaggressions and systemic bias. She'd argued about inequality with the passion of someone who believed words could change the world. But standing in this aisle, watching a flight attendant smile at the woman who'd stolen from her. Maya understood something she'd never fully grasped before. Theory was easy. Living it was violence. Jessica's hand pressed gently against her back, steering her toward the rear of the plane. Maya didn't resist. What was the point? Mark had already grabbed her backpack from under the seat. Diane had settled in, scrolling through her phone as if Maya had never existed. The walk to the back felt eternal. Faces blurred past, some curious, some embarrassed, some coldly indifferent. A little white boy, maybe 7 years old, stared at her with wide eyes. His mother pulled his attention away. Maya's phone pressed against her hip in her pocket. She could call her father. She could blow this whole thing up with one text. Richard Chen didn't tolerate disrespect, especially not toward his daughter. But wasn't that the problem? Maya wanted to exist in the world without her father's power shielding her. She wanted to be seen as a person, not an extension of his wealth. She'd gotten her wish, and the world had shown her exactly what it saw when it looked at her. Not a debate champion, not a future Stanford student, not a girl with dreams and dignity, just black, just inconvenient, just someone to move aside. Jessica stopped at row 32 near the lavatories. Seat B, middle seat, the plane's worst location, where the bathroom smell would waft over her for 3 hours. "Here you go," Jessica said brightly, as if she'd done Maya a favor. "We'll comp you some miles for the inconvenience." Inconvenience. That's what they called erasure now. Maya slid into the seat. Mark shoved her backpack into the overhead bin and disappeared. Jessica lingered for a moment, her expression almost apologetic. "It's just easier this way," she said quietly. "You understand, right?" Maya looked up at her. "No, I don't." Jessica's face hardened. She walked away without another word. The passenger in the window seat, an elderly white woman, stared straight ahead, pretending Maya didn't exist. The aisle seat remained empty. At least she had that. Maya pulled out her phone. Her hands shook as she opened her messages. Her father's last text, landed early. "Finishing paperwork tonight. See you tomorrow, sweetheart. So proud of you." She took a breath. Then she typed, "Dad." Something happened. Maya was 10 years old the first time she saw her father walk away from money. They'd been in his office, a glass tower overlooking the city. Maya sat in the corner doing homework, while Richard met with executives from a major aerospace company. The deal would have been worth hundreds of millions. Everything was going well until the lead executive made a joke. Maya didn't understand it then, but she heard the word and saw her father's face change. "Meeting's over," Richard said. "Standing. Richard, come on." "It was just a joke. Get out of my office." After they left, Maya asked what happened. Richard knelt down, taking her small hands in his. "Some people think money gives them permission to disrespect others," he said. "But you never let anyone buy your dignity, no matter how much they're offering." Richard had built Chen Aerospace Technologies from nothing. His parents had immigrated from Taiwan with 2 suitcases and a dream. He'd put himself through MIT working 3 jobs. His first investor laughed him out of the room, but Richard believed in something his father had told him. Excellence is the best revenge. He'd proven his father right. CAT became the industry leader in private aviation technology. They designed systems for the world's largest airlines, built jets for heads of state, revolutionized fuel efficiency standards, and now, after 20 years of building, Richard was about to sign the deal that would cement his legacy, a $5 billion partnership with Global Wing Airlines, the parent company of over 15 regional carriers. He'd negotiated for 8 months. Legal teams from both sides had combed through every clause. The contract sat on his desk at home, ready for tomorrow's signing ceremony. Champagne was already chilled. Press releases were drafted. This deal would expand CAT's reach across 3 continents. It would create 5,000 jobs. It would make Richard one of the most powerful figures in global aviation. Maya knew all of this because her father believed in transparency. He'd raised her to understand business, to see how power worked, to recognize leverage when she had it. But he'd also raised her to understand something more important, that power meant nothing if you didn't use it to protect people who had none. Your mother would want you to be strong, he'd told her after. Her mom died when Maya was 8. But strength isn't loud. It's knowing when to fight and how. Maya had inherited her father's strategic mind and her mother's fierce compassion. She'd learned to navigate rooms full of adults, to hold her own in debates against college students, to see 3 moves ahead. But right now, trapped in seat 32B, while a racist woman sat in her assigned seat, Maya realized her father had never taught her what to do when the system itself was rigged. She looked at her phone. Her message to him sat there unsent. She added the video she'd recorded. Then she pressed send. The plane's engines hummed. Maya felt the slight push as they pulled back from the gate. Any minute now. They'd taxi to the runway. Her phone buzzed. Dad. I just watched the video, then immediately, Dad. I'm calling the airline. Now. Dad. Do not let that plane take off. Maya's heart hammered. She typed, Dad, don't. I don't want special treatment. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Dad, this isn't special treatment. This is basic human dignity. Stay on that plane. I'm handling this. Maya stared at her phone. Around her, passengers settled in, oblivious. The flight attendants made their safety demonstration in the front. Jessica's voice carried through the cabin, cheerful and rehearsed. 10 minutes passed. The plane sat motionless at the gate. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Folks, we're experiencing a slight delay with our departure clearance. We'll be underway shortly. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin. Maya's phone buzzed again. Dad, I'm coming. Don't move. Wait, what? Maya, coming where? You're across the city. Dad, I'm 10 minutes from the airport. I never left. I had a feeling something was wrong. Stayed close to make calls for tomorrow's signing. Maya's stomach dropped. Her father was coming here, to this plane. Because of her, she wanted to text him to stop, to tell him she could handle this herself. But another part of her, the part that had just spent 20 minutes being erased, wanted nothing more than for someone to see her, to defend her. To make this right, 15 minutes passed. The plane still hadn't moved. Then the intercom crackled again. The pilot sounded confused now. Folks, we're going to need to return to the gate momentarily. There's been a request from ground operations. We apologize for the delay. Murmurs rippled through the cabin. A businessman in front of Maya swore under his breath. Someone complained about missing a connection. The plane lurched forward, then turned, creeping back toward the terminal. Maya's chest tightened. What was her father doing? Through the small window, she saw the jet bridge extending toward the door. The plane stopped. The seatbelt sign stayed on, but the cabin door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Voices at the front. Jessica's surprised tone. Mark's confusion. Then a new voice, male, calm, commanding. Where is she? Maya's breath caught. She knew that voice. Every passenger on the plane was about to know it too. Richard Chen stepped into the cabin like he owned the air itself. He wore the tailored charcoal suit he'd planned to wear for tomorrow's signing. His expression was controlled, but Maya knew her father's anger. It lived in the stillness of his jaw, the precision of his movements. He scanned the rows, his eyes finding her instantly in the back. Something softened in his face, relief, love, fury all at once. Then he turned to Jessica, who stood frozen near the front. I'm Richard Chen, he said, his voice carrying through the silent cabin. You removed my daughter from her assigned seat. I'd like to know why. Jessica's face went pale. Behind her, Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into the galley. But Richard wasn't waiting for an answer. His eyes swept the cabin until they landed on row 14. Seat A. Diane Fletcher had gone the color of ash. Richard walked slowly down the aisle toward Maya. Every head turned to follow him. He reached her row, leaned down and kissed her forehead. You okay? He asked quietly. Maya nodded, unable to speak. Richard straightened and pulled out his phone. He tapped it once, then turned to show the captain, who had emerged from the cockpit looking thoroughly confused. On the screen was a contract. Maya recognized the Global Wing logo at the top. "This is the $5 billion partnership agreement I'm scheduled to sign tomorrow morning with your parent company," Richard said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "I was finalizing the terms tonight when my daughter sent me a video of what happened on this plane." The captain's eyes widened. "So here's what's going to happen," Richard continued. "Either you fix this situation immediately, or I walk away from this deal and take it to your competitor, who has been very eager to work with my company." The cabin went silent. You could have heard a pin drop at 30,000 feet. The captain cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, I'm sure we can resolve this." "Can you?" Richard's voice cut through like steel. "Because from where I'm standing, your crew forcibly removed my daughter from her assigned seat and gave it to a woman who had no right to it. Then they relocated her to the worst seat on the plane. Near the bathroom." Jessica stepped forward, her face red. "Sir, we were just trying to avoid conflict by punishing the victim." Richard turned to face her fully. "My daughter showed you her boarding pass. She followed every rule. And you still chose to believe she was the problem." Mark tried to intervene. "It was a judgment call in a difficult situation." "No." Richard's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "It was racism." "Say the word." "Don't hide behind difficult situation." The cabin remained frozen. Passengers who'd been scrolling their phones now stared openly. Some looked ashamed, others defensive. A few nodded in agreement. Richard walked up the aisle toward row 14. Diane shrank back against the window. Her designer bag clutched to her chest like a shield. "You," Richard said, stopping at her row. "You saw a black girl and decided she didn't belong. That seat wasn't yours, but you took it anyway because you assumed no one would stop you." Diane's mouth opened and closed. "Oh, son, there was a mistake with my ticket. Your ticket says 14C, middle seat. You knew exactly what you were doing." Richard turned back to the captain and crew. "Here's what happens now. This woman gets off my daughter's seat. Maya gets a formal apology. And I want the names of everyone involved in this decision." The captain nodded frantically. "Absolutely, Mr. Chen. Jessica, Mark—" "Wait." Richard held up his hand. He looked at the other passengers, his gaze sweeping across them like a judge surveying a courtroom. "I also want to address everyone who sat here and watched, who filmed it for entertainment, who stayed silent when they could have spoken up. A businessman 2 rows up had the decency to look away." "This is how it works," Richard said. "One person commits the act, but 30 people enable it with their silence. You're all complicit." Diane suddenly stood, grabbing her bag. "Fine, I'll move." "This is ridiculous." "Sit down," Richard said quietly. Diane froze. "You don't get to walk away and pretend this didn't happen," Richard continued. "You're going to sit there and think about what you did, while the captain decides whether to remove you from this flight entirely." The captain looked torn. "Mr. Chen, if we remove a passenger, we'll need to file reports, contact authorities." "Then do it." Richard pulled out his phone again. "Or I make one call to Global Wing's CEO right now, and your company loses the biggest contract in its history." The captain made his decision in seconds. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and deplane." Diane's face turned scarlet. "You can't do this." "I have rights." "You have the right to leave peacefully or be escorted off," the captain said. "Your choice." For a moment it looked like Diane might refuse. Then she grabbed her bag and stormed toward the exit, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. As she passed Richard, she hissed, "You people always play the victim." Richard didn't flinch. "And you people always reveal yourselves eventually." Diane disappeared through the cabin door. The jet bridge swallowed her designer clothes and expensive indignation. 2 security officers waited at the gate. The captain had made a call. Richard turned to Maya. "Come on, sweetheart." Let's get you where you belong. Maya stood on shaky legs. Her father's hand on her shoulder steadied her as they walked toward row 14. The aisle felt different now, not like a gauntlet, but like a path she had every right to take. She slid into the window seat. Her father retrieved her backpack from the overhead bin and placed it gently under the seat in front of her. "You okay?" he asked again, kneeling in the aisle beside her. Maya nodded, but tears finally broke through. "I just wanted to be normal for one day." Richard's face cracked just slightly. "I know. I'm so sorry this happened to you. It's not your fault, no, but it's my responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen again." He stood, squeezing her hand once. "I need to make some calls." "You going to be all right?" "Yeah." Maya managed a small smile. "Go cancel that contract." Richard's expression turned grim. "Already done." He walked back toward the front, phone already to his ear. Maya heard fragments. "Completely unacceptable. Systemic issue. My legal team will be in touch." The cabin slowly came back to life. Passengers whispered. Some looked at Maya with something like respect. Others avoided her gaze entirely. Jessica approached, her face pale. "Miss Chen, I want to apologize." "Don't," Maya said quietly. "Not to me. Apologize to every other person you've done this to who didn't have my father to defend them." Jessica flinched like she'd been slapped. She walked away without another word. The captain's voice returned to the intercom. "Folks, we're going to experience a longer delay while we address some operational issues. We apologize for the inconvenience." Maya pulled out her phone. Messages flooded in. Her friends, her debate coach, even some reporters. Somehow word had already spread. The videos passengers had recorded were online. Then her father returned, sliding into the aisle seat next to her. He shouldn't be here. His car was probably still in the departure zone. But he wasn't leaving. "I'm staying," he said, answering her unspoken question. "My assistant will handle tomorrow's meeting. I'm flying with you. Dad, the contract is cancelled permanently." Richard's voice was calm, final. "Global Wing's CEO called me 6 times in the last 10 minutes. I didn't answer. They'll issue a statement by morning. It won't be enough." Maya stared at him. "I really walked away from $5 billion. I walked away from people who create environments where this can happen." Richard took her hand. "Money comes and goes. Principles don't." The plane finally began to move, but as they taxied toward the runway, Maya's phone buzzed one more time. A news alert. "Breaking. Billionaire Richard Chen cancels 5B airline deal after daughter experiences racism on flight." Below it, another, "Global Wing stock drops 8% in after-hours trading." And another, "Video of black teen forced from seat goes viral. Father's response shocks aviation industry." Maya looked at her father. "It's everywhere." Richard nodded slowly. "Good, let them see." But then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. "It's Global Wing's CEO," he said. "He's at the airport. He wants to meet face-to-face before we take off." "Don't answer it," Maya said. Richard looked at his daughter, her tear-stained face, her defiant eyes, her mother's strength shining through. Then he answered the call. The plane stopped again. Maya felt the engines power down. Richard spoke quietly into his phone. "You have 5 minutes." He ended the call and turned to the captain. "We're not going anywhere until I say so." The cabin filled with groans. A man several rows back shouted, "Come on! Some of us have places to be." Richard stood and faced the passengers. "I apologize for the delay, but if you're upset about losing an hour, imagine how my daughter felt losing her dignity." Silence fell again. Minutes later, a man in an expensive suit rushed onto the plane. James Morrison, CEO of Global Wing Airlines. Maya recognized him from business magazines in her father's office. He looked panicked, desperate. "Richard, please. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to discuss." Richard remained seated next to Maya. $5 billion. Think about what you're walking away from. I am thinking about it. I'm also thinking about every black and brown passenger who's experienced what my daughter just did and had no recourse. No power, no voice. Morrison glanced at Maya, then back to Richard. We'll investigate. We'll retrain staff. We'll implement new policies. You'll say all the right things, Richard interrupted. Then nothing will fundamentally change. I've seen it before. What do you want? Morrison's voice cracked with desperation. Tell me what you want. Richard stood slowly. I want you to feel what I felt watching that video. The helplessness, the rage. The knowledge that your child's worth was measured by her skin color and found lacking. Richard, please, I want you to explain to your board why you lost the biggest deal in your company's history. I want them to ask you hard questions. And I want you to have no good answers. Morrison's face went pale. Behind him, the captain and crew watched like witnesses to an execution. This isn't just about money, Richard continued. It's about sending a message that racism has consequences. Real ones, expensive ones, career-ending ones. Morrison turned to Maya. Miss Chen, I am truly sorry for what happened to you. Maya looked at him with eyes older than her 16 years. Are you sorry it happened, or sorry my dad has leverage? Morrison didn't answer. Richard placed his hand on Morrison's shoulder, not friendly but final. We're done here. Get off my daughter's plane. Morrison left. The door closed behind him. The engines powered up. Maya watched the city lights fade below as they finally climbed into the darkness. Her father sat beside her, his jaw tight, his hand still holding hers. You okay? He asked for the third time. This time, Maya answered honestly. No, but I will be. The flight to Philadelphia was surreal. Word had spread through the cabin about who was sitting in row 14. Some passengers approached Richard to shake his hand. Others avoided looking at them entirely. Maya stared out the window at the clouds turned silver by moonlight. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, news alerts, social media notifications. The video had gone viral. Millions of views. Do you regret it? She asked her father quietly. Walking away from the deal. Richard didn't hesitate. Not for a second. $5 billion, Dad, that's generational wealth. Company expansion, jobs. And if I'd signed that contract, I'd be telling you that your dignity is negotiable. That racism is acceptable as long as the price is right. Richard turned to face her. What kind of father would that make me? Maya felt tears threaten again. Most people wouldn't have done what you did. Most people don't have the power I have. And power means nothing if you don't use it to protect people. He squeezed her hand. Your mother understood that. She'd have burned that contract herself. They sat in silence for a while. Then Maya pulled up her laptop. I want to write something. About what happened. You don't have to. I know. But I want to. Maya opened a document. All my life I've been debating about injustice. Abstract cases, hypothetical scenarios. But this was real. And I need to say something real. Richard nodded. Then say it. Maya typed for an hour while her father dozed beside her. The words poured out, not angry but clear. Not accusatory but honest. She wrote about Diane's face when she realized Maya wouldn't just disappear. About Jessica's choice to side with power instead of truth. About the 30 passengers who became accomplices with their silence. But she also wrote about her father's response. About how privilege becomes purpose when you use it correctly. About the difference between having power and wielding it with integrity. When she finished, she showed Richard. He read it carefully, his expression unreadable. It's perfect, he said finally. Are you going to post it? I think so. Is that okay? Maya, you don't need my permission to use your voice. Richard smiled. That's the whole point. Maya hit publish. Within minutes, the essay began spreading, shared by activists, journalists, everyday people who'd experienced similar moments. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer that, Richard warned. But Maya saw the caller ID, Philadelphia Inquirer. Her journalist wanted her story, she answered. The story broke the next morning like a bomb. Maya's essay, raw, powerful, precise, was everywhere. The Philadelphia Inquirer ran it as a front-page opinion piece. CNN picked it up. International outlets translated it. But it was the video that truly shook the aviation industry. Someone had compiled footage from multiple passengers' phones, creating a comprehensive record of everything that happened. Diane sitting in Maya's seat. Jessica's dismissive attitude. The walk of shame to the back. Richard's entrance. His ultimatum. It was damning, undeniable, viral in ways that made corporate PR teams sweat. By noon, Global Wing's stock had dropped 15%. Major clients were reassessing their partnerships. The board had called an emergency meeting. Maya sat in her hotel room in Philadelphia, supposed to be preparing for her debate tournament. Instead, she watched the world react to her story. Her phone rang again. This time she recognized the number. Global Wing's main line. Should I answer? She asked her father, who'd stayed with her instead of flying back. Your choice, Maya answered. Hello? Miss Chen, this is Sarah Williams, Head of Customer Relations for Global Wing. The woman's voice was professional but strained. I'm calling to personally apologize for your experience and to inform you that we've taken immediate action. What action? Jessica and Mark have been terminated. Diane Fletcher has been placed on our permanent no-fly list. We're implementing mandatory bias training for all staff and reviewing our passenger rights protocols. Maya put the phone on speaker so her father could hear. And the captain? She asked a pause. Captain Reynolds has been suspended pending investigation. Investigation of what? He knew what happened and initially did nothing. Miss Chen, we're trying to make this right. Are you? Maya's voice hardened. Or are you trying to control the damage to your stock price? Another pause. Both can be true. At least she was honest. We'd like to offer you compensation, Williams continued. A full refund of your ticket, flight credits, and a significant financial settlement in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement. Richard cut in. Not happening. Mr. Chen, we're simply trying to resolve this matter. You can't buy silence from us, Richard said flatly. And the fact that you tried shows you still don't understand the problem. Then what do you want? Williams's composure cracked slightly. Maya looked at her father. An understanding passed between them. I want systemic change, Maya said. Real policies with teeth. Independent oversight. Public accountability reports. I want you to prove that black passengers are treated equally. Not promise it, prove it. That's a significant undertaking. So is rebuilding your company's reputation, Richard added. You've lost Chen Aerospace Technologies permanently. How many other contracts are you willing to lose? Silence on the other end. Then I'll take this to the board. You do that, Maya said. And Ms. Williams? I'm publishing our conversation unless you tell me not to. I can't stop you. Good answer. Maya ended the call. She looked at her father, adrenaline coursing through her. Did I just do that? Richard grinned, the first real smile since yesterday. How you absolutely did. Your mother would be so proud. 3 months later, Maya stood in her father's office, watching news coverage of Global Wing's announcement. The airline had implemented the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in the industry. Independent audits, public accountability metrics, mandatory training with real consequences, a passenger bill of rights that couldn't be waived. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. They had no choice, Richard said, standing beside her. 23 major clients threatened to walk. The Department of Transportation opened an investigation. Their stock still hasn't recovered. Do you think it'll actually change things? Maya asked. For some people, yes. Others will find new ways to discriminate. Richard turned to face her. But that's why we document everything. Why we speak up. Why we use whatever power we have, Maya nodded. She'd learned that lesson viscerally. Her essay had been published in dozens of outlets. She'd given interviews to major networks. She'd become, somewhat uncomfortably, a face of the movement against everyday racism. But she'd also returned to just being Maya. She'd competed in her debate tournament and won. She'd been accepted early to Stanford. She'd continued living her life, refusing to be defined solely by one moment of injustice. "You know what's interesting?" Maya said. "Jessica reached out to me last week." Richard raised an eyebrow. "The flight attendant?" "Yeah. She sent a long email apologizing again. She's working with civil rights organizations now, training service industry workers to recognize their own biases." Maya pulled up the email on her phone. "She said losing her job was the wake-up call she needed. Do you forgive her?" Maya considered the question. "I don't know yet, but I appreciate that she's doing the work." Her father nodded. "That's fair." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights below, the same view Maya had seen before the flight that changed everything. "I have something for you," Richard said. He pulled out an envelope from his desk drawer. Inside was a boarding pass, first class. Her name printed clearly. "Dad, I don't need—" "It's not real," he interrupted with a smile. "It's symbolic. A reminder that you always belonged in that seat, or any seat you choose. Not because of who your father is, but because of who you are." Maya hugged him tightly. "Thank you for standing up for me." "Always," Richard said. "But next time you won't need me. You'll stand up for yourself." "You already did." Maya flew to Stanford alone the following September. Economy by choice, seat 14A by request. The flight attendant, a young black woman named Keisha, checked her boarding pass and smiled. "Welcome aboard, Maya. I've read your essay. It's required reading in our training now." Maya settled into her seat as other passengers boarded. An elderly white man claimed the seat next to her. He glanced at her briefly, nodded politely, then pulled out his book. Normal, unremarkable, exactly as it should be. As the plane lifted into the California sky, Maya thought about that night 3 months ago, about Diane's sneer and Jessica's choice, about her father's ultimatum and the $5 billion he walked away from. She thought about power, how it protects itself, how it resists change, how it only bends when forced, but also how it can be wielded with integrity, how it can create space for others, how it can cost everything and still be worth it. Her father had taught her that lesson. But Maya had learned something else too, that speaking up wasn't just the responsibility of those with power. It was the duty of anyone who witnessed injustice, anyone who refused to let silence be complicity. The world was full of people sitting in seats that didn't belong to them, taking space from those they deemed less worthy. And the world was full of bystanders who watched it happen, who filmed it for entertainment, who prioritized comfort over courage. But the world was also full of people like her father, who saw wrong and couldn't look away, who understood that integrity wasn't something you claimed. It was something you demonstrated, even when it cost you everything. Maya pulled out her laptop and opened a new document. She had another essay to write, another story to tell, not about herself this time, but about all the others who'd stood in that aisle, who'd been told they didn't belong, who'd walked to the back of the plane with their dignity in tatters. Their stories mattered too. And Maya would make sure they were heard. The plane climbed higher, chasing the sun toward tomorrow. And Maya Chen, daughter, debater, fighter, smiled at the endless sky ahead. She belonged here. She'd always belonged. And she'd never let anyone tell her otherwise again.